welcome to today's episode of the Dive Into Reiki Roundtable. I'm so excited. We're going to talk about a theme that I feel is pretty important and becoming more important, distance session or remote session, whatever you want to call them. And for me, they were very challenging at the beginning, like, does this work? How do I do this? So I'm excited to have three wonderful women sharing this table with me. Ifetayo, Danica, Helene, thank you so much for joining me. And we're going to talk a little bit about your experience, some of your lessons, some of your biggest oops, and perhaps some of your stories that really moved you and make you go deeper into this practice. Because like everything Reiki, we can go a lot deeper into distance session, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to let yourself introduce, Ifetayo, starting with you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me and us to this round table. Beautiful sister women Reiki friends. And I am Ifetayo White, and I live on St. Helena Island, South Carolina. And this has been my home for 22 years. I moved there in 2000 from Washington, D.C., which is where I was first attuned Reiki 1 and 2 in 1995 in the Western tradition and on the lineage of Mrs. Takata. And then I became a Reiki Master I was attuned Reiki 3 in 99 and moved to Beaufort, South Carolina, or St. Helena in 2000, and have been teaching there, and subsequently received additional Reiki 3 training with our beloved Frans Stiene in 2020. So I'm happy to be here. I've been practicing for a very long time.
So we love it.
Thank you.
I'm going to follow in the clock of my screen. So Danica, you're next in my screen.
Okay. Hello, I'm Danica Arizola. I live in Philadelphia. I've been practicing since 2008, 2009, I think. And I trained with Kim Fleischer, who was the owner, founder of the Reiki School, the first Reiki school in Philly. And what else was I saying?
Whatever those things about you.
Yeah, I love talking about Reiki. So thank you for inviting me to be here. And yeah, I'm at a loss right now for words. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Happy to be here.
Oh, we'll make you talk. Don't worry. We'll make you talk soon.
Yeah.
Helene, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helene Williams. Thank you for inviting me to the round table today. I have been practicing Reiki since 2007. Had a few teachers over the years, most recently with Frans Stiene. And yeah, I am also a registered nurse. So my background is heavily focused on Reiki and healthcare. And but I have a broad background in also providing Reiki sessions for the community. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Natalie.
No, thank you. And I've met all of you both in person and online, and I'm so grateful to have you in my circle I consider you all friends, so you'll have to accept and survive that one. Perfect. So I wanted to start a little bit about distance session. So when I first trained, and I trained in a very Western, not the traditional Western Reiki, I trained into very more like, a little bit more on the woo-woo side. And to do a distance session, I had a whole ritual and a formula of symbols. And then I had to do a lot of things and then finish with a Reiki sandwich, it was called, right? Which worked wonderful well. As I advanced, my practice has changed a lot. So I wanted to ask you first to say a little bit, where did you start it? And where are you now? So I went from very busy rituals and formulas to an open myself. I just sit and do my remote sessions, right? So I wanted to check with all of you, what is the biggest thing that has changed over the years in your distant work? And work is probably not the right, but
I'll step up. I'll step up because I did begin sharing distance healing in 95. And the biggest difference is a huge difference for me because, of course, I was trained and taught in a very traditional Western way with the symbols and a proxy and all of that. And now, actually, my sharing distance healing is so simpler and so much based in intention and oneness once I really got that concept that there's no space, no distance, no time between us, it just shifted everything for me. Where I was no longer feeling as that though I was sending Reiki to someone at a distance and, doing something that I actually, the person that I was with and myself, we were here together. Actually, we were one, and that it was the strong intention that they receive what they need. And I don't do much, and I don't use proxies or anything that way. Actually, I never did, even though I was taught to. I never felt that. But and of course, we didn't have computers at that time. We didn't have visual. It was all phone. And but anyhow, so now we have a person there, and it's the beauty of that oneness is even stronger because you're with a person, visually. And since the pandemic, I did some distance healing before the pandemic, but since then, my whole practice of distance healing just tripled. And so the capacity to practice oneness and intention of sharing Reiki and just sitting in the knowing that what needs to happen will happen. And it's all been beautiful.
Oh, I love that. What you say, sitting in the knowing that what will happen, right? That trust in the practice.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
And I wanted, before we move on, and I know I'm like deviating, but you did when we interview with each other. I remember you mentioned like you share not only with people, but you do this beautiful work with the sea, clearing those generation of people with the slave trade. And
yes,
I love about what you say, and I'll let you
yeah.
the story. It's like it was everyone involved, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
share that a little bit about that.
Yeah, that I get. That's probably a way of distance healing. I never thought of it that way, but I know when I moved to the coast of South Carolina, in my meditations, I got very strong guidance that a part of my reason to be here was to send Reiki across the ocean, across the transatlantic slave trade to really to heal the energy and the energy of my own descendants and of all of the descendants who from the enslaved folks from Africa and the trauma that has become a part of our psyches. So for 22 years, I've been here and blessing the waters. I take a walk at the beach practically every morning. I'm very close to the ocean. Actually, I live a mile from the ocean, but I go to another specific beach that I love more. So it's been a beautiful, I feel blessed to have Reiki in my life to offer to the healing of that trauma.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
That expands so much. Again, we see remote Reiki or distance sessions as something very specific, right? But for me, what you're doing is a great example of using this practice without time or distance, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Helene, I'm looking at you. So how has your practice evolved? Because also with healthcare, I don't know how much, distance is involved. So I'm like looking forward to hear.
Yeah, well, I first started in a very westernized lineage. And so I had a whole protocol I had to follow when I started. And, first of all, at that time, also, there wasn't a lot of internet coverage for, the symbols. So you got them from your teacher and they were very secret. And this whole other thing. And so I was a little bit intimidated by them, especially, the distance healing symbol, because I was like, oh, I'm never going to learn that, and then there was this ritual that went with it. And so there was, for me, a lot of fear when I was doing it, because I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I connecting in the right way? And so, that was always like a thing for me. Am I doing it right as I'm holding that space? And I've used teddy bears, like I was trained like the teddy bear method as the surrogate. The knee, I don't know if you've heard of the knee method to use your knee. So that one too. So all those different kinds of things. So but my practice has really transitioned a lot to just sitting in meditation. And so that there is no fear of doing it wrong. Of course, I know the symbol by now, right? So I do use that, but it's more just like sitting in the space and sharing that space, becoming one with the person that I'm sharing it with. As far as Reiki and healthcare, I really didn't do a lot of remote sessions. I was like more hands-on in person for that, but that doesn't mean that we can't. And actually, twice a week, I share Reiki remotely with the veterans at our local VA. So, yeah, so it's been really nice because when COVID happened, I couldn't go in person there as I was doing. So I was able to offer it to them remotely. So it's kind of a combination of I sit with them in meditation. I offer kind of like a Reiki guided meditation as I'm allowing that flow to happen to the veterans that sign on for that day. And so it's interesting. I love to reflect back on those days when I, was so nervous about sending and memorizing the symbol and making sure everything had my I's dotted and my T's crossed and all those other things and all the symbol crossings, right? So yeah, it's definitely changed for me.
Yeah. And I think probably at the beginning we need that, right? Because if I tell you sit there and hold someone in your heart, it makes not a lot of sense.
Yes.
I guess we need to deepen our practice to go there. I was a pillow girl. I love having a pillow for the back. And I have to say, I'm also very open, I don't use proxy, but if I'm distracted, I'm gonna use my body, I'm gonna use a pillow. Because some days it's a session, it's 8 p.m. New York. I'm like, and so there is no wrong going back from a different space, which is I use them as anchors, so I'm focused. Okay, I'm connecting because I'm not in the right headspace. So I go back and forth. Most of them, actually, for me lately, it's harder with a proxy. But when I'm I have ADD running, I'm like, come my pillow, you look amazing. Come here. But Zoom, as you said, has helped a lot. Danica, last but not least, tell us a little bit about your evolution, or maybe from the beginning you got something that worked for you, which we're also dying to hear.
Very, very similar to the previous experiences. Very Western, like the tops of starting at the knee, working up the thighs. That never, ever resonated for me. I did try teddy bear. That never resonated. And I was taught get a picture of the person, make sure you know their address. And it had to be one thing that I did that's changed a lot from the beginning was the 15 minutes every day for 3 days consecutive. For some reason, when my teacher taught that was extremely important, it had to be same time, 3 days, consecutive days. I don't do that at all anymore. I think the biggest thing that has changed, was mentioned earlier, is the trust in the interconnection of all things. So if I don't use, I do use a symbol before, but I sort of envision in my, the person in my mind, and just connect with them that way. Sometimes I might, if you walked in on me doing this, it might look very strange because I have my eyes closed. I'm envisioning them in my mind's eye, but I'm touching them like this, like they're in front of me. So it might look weird, but that's worked for me very well. So I don't have to use any props. I just kind of see them in front of me. And then, I think what else? I also do weekly distance. Well, my idea originally was because I work at the cancer center and at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, and so every week I wanted to do a distance session for the cancer patients, their families, their caregivers. And so my idea was everyone will just be lying and receiving, and I'll just send Reiki to everyone. And it was very hard for people to over Zoom to be still, especially because they're not Reiki practitioners. They're like, what is she doing? What am I doing lying here for an hour, right? So we started with, we do some sort of meditation that gets them connected to Reiki without them understanding that they're getting connected to Reiki. And then I just guide them through what would be a self-practice. And everyone seems to, without really understanding what's happening, and I do send Reiki before, to the session, to everyone who's registered. And it just seems to, everyone sort of feels more calm and at ease, you know, maybe less pain or whatever it is. It seems to work virtually. And I remember doing a class with, I know we said not to do this, but with Frans before I went, like during COVID, I was going from teaching in person to teaching classes online. And I was like, how's that gonna go, right? And he's like, if everything's interconnected, then you just trust that it's gonna work. And so I just kind of went with that, and just, yeah, the trusting in it has just kind of set me free from doing,
Yes.
you know, from having to do it.
Yeah. No, and I think it's you said like beautiful, trust frees you from doing.
Yeah.
And then you need, again, years of practice to go to that trust. Like we can,
absolutely,
if someone is watching or hearing this and they have been practicing for a month, please be patient. Like use the protocol as long as you need it. But there is a moment where that heart opens, and that's the meaning of the third symbol, right? That heart opening, that feeling of the connection, that something shifts.
Yes.
But it's good if you're starting to know where this goes. Like we don't need a protocol for life. And a protocol is just almost again of getting the state of mind of interconnection. The protocol is not, you know, it's not the session to say. The protocol is just something to help you get to the space. And then in times, some people love it for life. Some people, we can get rid of it and just trust and go to the heart area, right? So I think that is a beautiful say. I like that. Trust frees you.
I think you don't get the benefits of practicing unless you practice. So you won't know unless you do it.
No, that's very important. But I think when we take classes, we're often almost like made feel that we should be able to do everything because of an appointment,
Right from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's funny. When do people say, am I ready for Reiki 3? I'm like, how do you feel with distance sessions? I struggle, is impossible. I'm like, okay, you may want to practice distance session before you go for Reiki 3, because Reiki 3 is hands off. So for me, the beauty of Reiki 2 having a remote session is like, it's your preparation, like Reiki 1, all hands. Reiki 2, you start letting go of the hands. Reiki 3, hands off, right?
Yes.
And again, expanding what the concept of distance, like, you know, with the work you do, you know, with the either with the veteran cancer people, but also with the past, with whatever we want. So this time is the first round table. I actually asked for questions. So they sent me a number of them. And some of it we talk about, you know, what we use, but symbol or no symbol, and in this case specifically, you know, the third symbol, before session. Is it a must, a not must? What is your personal experience?
Well, here I'll step in again. And again, I do teach a lot. I teach individuals more than at a class. So I teach every week. I'm teaching, and when I teach my Reiki 2 students, you know, I teach the protocol. This is it, and this is how you practice, and symbols and all of it that we all know. And for myself, though, at this point, I don't use the distance symbol any longer. Now I do. I hate to say use, because that's not really that's not the energy that I'm conveying. I'm not with the distance symbol as I was when I share Reiki at a distance. The distance symbol for me, I do bring it into focus when I am programming Reiki to go later to someone. So that's a part of my practice in the morning. If I know that someone is having surgery that day or an interview or whatever, and I'm not going to be able to be there with them for a session, then I will program Reiki to go there later. And that's when I am with the Reiki symbol. And that's just a part of my own personal practice. And I do teach that to my students also, because it was a part of the manual of my lineage, that particular practice with the distance symbol. So that's my way of being with the distance symbol, but not when I am sharing Reiki and at a distance with someone.
I love it. It's about making it your own, right? So that is important. Helene, how are you? Symbol, no symbol? Beginners, yes, no? What is your point of view on that?
I mean, I certainly teach that when I teach, but it kind of depends. Like you mentioned the pillow, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes if I feel like I need, like I'm kind of like rushed to do something or something in order to get myself settled, and I
Yes.
meditate, and then I use it to connect in that way. But again, it's that heart space. Like for me, it's really getting to know about that person and connecting in the heart space, and just remembering that, because we're already there, right? We're already one with them. And I think that's the beauty of practicing year after year after year after year, and trusting, like you said in the very beginning, trusting that it's going to do exactly what it needs to do, and we don't have to do a lot of ritual anymore once you start to work with it in that way. We just trust. But like with the veterans on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't use a symbol. We connect in that heart space. It's usually the same people that come every week, and they just tune in and they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure what's happening, but I feel super relaxed, and and we love it, and we look forward to every Tuesday and Thursday. And so I know that it's working. And so I think it just comes with experience, but so sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends. Either way, it works perfectly fine as it needs to.
Amazing. Danica.
I use the symbol not because I think I need to use it for distance Reiki to work. I use it more to almost like a cue of like, this is what's going to happen, and to center myself. I teach my students absolutely because it was how I was taught. And I think in order to let go of something, you have to actually have a structure to let go of. So I definitely say use it when you're first beginning to figure out how to make it your own. And do I think it's necessary to use it? No, I enjoy using it though. I some like drawing in the air, like I don't know, fancy about it. and it feels sometimes I'll draw it on my hands or put it on my heart, just because I'm like a physical person, so it makes me feel more embodied by it.
And I think from what you're all saying, like the symbol doesn't have the power, but it allows us to get to the state of mind we need. And for example, the way I'm teaching now is I give them a protocol and I give them 3 options, right? So this is when you're starting and you're scared, this is if you're feeling a little bit more there, and this is where you want to go, which is holding the space. But I encourage people to meditate with that 3rd symbol a lot, to just be more connected to the state of mind and have that taste of the heart. Because if you told me when I started, especially when I started Reiki, I wasn't very connected to anything, not even myself, especially not myself. If you had told me connect to your heart, I'll be like, like I will not even understand what that meant. So I think the beauty of that, and thank God you're like a lot more like open-hearted people than I was in my 30s working in advertising. But I really didn't understand. So for me, the beauty of that 3rd symbol is, okay, the symbol is not a key to open that. Well, it's a key to open a door, but it's not like the symbol is not like the distant phone number that we call, right? The symbol is there to allow you to reach a state of mind, right? And so I think, and from what you're talking is what we're all saying, but if someone is watching this and they're starting, like the symbol, the power of the symbol is not in the symbol, it's in bringing you to the right state of mind. So in my case, I teach that, but I also give them the 2 options. And I try to point the way, like, don't confuse these, the power is not in the symbol, is what I'm always want to try to tell them, because I think sometimes we put too much power in the symbols, and the symbols without you practicing them are worthless, right? The symbol, if they're not being embodied by you, they're beautiful drawings.
Yes,
exactly.
If anyone thinks differently, I'm very happy to discuss it over email. Do not get offended. Take everything with a grain of salt. I know we all have very different trainings. Okay, this question has been, and I think honestly, like it has many answers. There is no right or wrong answer. Authorization. Can we send and share Reiki with or without authorization? Lineages have very different rules. As you said, Danica, when you started, you even had a rule of 3 days, 15 minutes every hour, which I haven't heard. And I train in...
No, 15 minutes at the same time every day.
Exactly.
So like if it was like from 12 to 12:15 and the person had to be there in receiving mode, you know, like it was very structured.
Sure you have the
And I
authorization.
still teach that. And I do have my students practice that way. And then also, like you, I sort of encourage them to imagine for themselves what else, like how else could this look for you, you know, because it's going to be different for everybody and every situation. If you're sending to someone who's never, you know, like, I don't know, lives across the world, you're in different time zones, you know, what are you going to do?
I actually like letting people, I'm going to start this one. I don't ask authorization, but if I'm sharing Reiki with someone, I like them to know because I feel they're more active. They're active receivers. And for me, the difference between someone saying, oh, sure, send me Reiki, and someone who's actively receiving is very different. So for me, it's not about authorization. It's about empowering the people to receive and have a moment to reconnect with themselves. If not, honestly, I, like Ifetayo, I do a lot of sharing, you know, with the world and with every being. Every time I practice for myself and every being. I don't ask authorization for that.
Yes.
And my mom, who hates Reiki and thinks it's brujeria, witchcraft, I may hold her in my space of light. I don't ask, but again, I don't force it either, right? So I don't know what is your approach. And Helene, this time I started with you. I'm changing the game.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I don't, I mean, of course, if a client wants a session, of course they know about it and we schedule a time and we chat on Zoom, and then I do the session after we chat for a little bit and then we check in again. But I mean, if I send Reiki to my daughter in California, I don't call her up and say, I'm going to send you Reiki, you need to lie down, you know, that whole thing. I just say, you know, I've sent you Reiki today. And she's like, okay. But also there's a lot of times when I don't ask. There's people that, you know, I live in the city now, so I hear ambulances go past my house all the time. And so it might be a few minutes, but I'm actively sending Reiki to the whoever has passed by in the ambulance, right? And the crew and the nurses that are going to be receiving that patient, you know? So, you know, of course you can't call and ask them, but it's just that heartfelt intention that they're going to receive that loving and healing energy. So I'm not a big believer in, you know, that you have to call the person up and they have to lie down and, you know, because I'm sending Reiki to people all the time that don't even know that they're receiving it. And it's not a manipulation of energy, you know. It's not like we're taking things out or putting things in. It's sharing that love and compassion from the heart space. I think if you're doing some kind of energy work where you're manipulating things, that's a lot different. So that's how I practice, because I just send a lot to people I don't even know.
Yes.
I love what you said. We don't manipulate, right? We hold the space with love and compassion. So that's a big difference. And also I'm going to take advantage. So when I studied Reiki, they told me never share Reiki with people driving because they will crash.
Oh,
right. What? You know, but it's a myth. So I think it's a great example. That is a myth, right? So that is a myth. So those
I see somebody broken down on the side of the freeway. I always say, like, I'm like sending Reiki all over that I've never heard that.
No, that was my training. We'll have like, yeah, but my training was like, use the second symbol, clap 3 times and you'll find your keys. So my training was a little, I can almost understand why my mom will think it's witchcraft. Like, oh my God, I use a symbol to find my keys, right? So my training was, but so like, again, we are like, and we've heard all of us this thing, like sharing Reiki is like sharing light, right? Like you're not, and as Helene said it very well, we're not manipulating energy. We're offering light. Whoever needs it can take it or they cannot take it. We're not trying to fit it in. So I think that was a great story, Helene. Thank you. And I will do that. I do it the homeless in the subway. We are like, so they're like, yesterday, no one is sitting from this guy. I'm like, okay, I'm the dog. It's empty. This is the only space where like the guy, he's not too stinky. So I sit in front of him and then they're holding the space, right? Also, honestly, makes me feel safer. Like I go to my space. I'm like, I'm sharing Reiki with this man. He's passed out. You know, there is no way, like with the bottle of alcohol literally next to him, there is no way he can have authorization, right?
No.
Yeah.
My teacher put a disclaimer of may this Reiki be connected to whoever, whatever, if they are open to receiving it. And I used to do that because I was so afraid of, like, if I send this without getting consent and then something bad's going to happen. I no longer do that either. If I'm doing a Reiki circle with a bunch of people and, we say, because you speak aloud and say who you want to send Reiki to, I will use that just because it's nice to sort of declare it verbally out into the universe. But I don't think that you need to have permission. I think whenever you can, sure, but I don't think it's necessary. I think of it as like, when people say, oh, I'm praying for you, and you're like, don't pray for me. I've heard those situations. I think if it's more of like a loving intention, and that if the person really isn't open to receiving it, it's not going to affect them either way. So you're sending out love and healing and light, and it's going to land where it's where it's supposed to. So that's how I think of it.
Ifetayo.
Huh? I love it when everyone's shared, and all is my experience also of, and that open heart piece resonates so much with me because I can feel that with all of us, and most of the practitioners I know. We want to do something. We want to, support and uplift, and so for me, when Reiki came into my life, it was like I have something that I can share when without permission. I didn't feel, because I always prayed for people. So for me, it was an extension of prayer life, where I felt I could do something without doing something. I can offer something. So yeah, I'm really I'm favor, and I've always practiced sharing Reiki without permission, except for those times where I do want that deeper engaging and setting a time with someone that they will be present, whether it's a client or a friend or family member, where we can be present at the same time in the sharing. So every day you're sharing Reiki. I wait, at least I do, and sounds like everyone else, at the sound of an ambulance, at the ocean, with I see dead animals and I'm sharing shokare. I don't know why. I've always done that shokare because it's, for me, that's yeah.
Back to the earth. I'm still in that ambulance things, because in New York there are like so many like sirens all the time, and then they annoy me. So I think that's gonna be a practice I'll adopt, Helene, from you. I'll steal, because I think it's gonna change my relationship with New York sirens a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we really limit ourselves, when we say, we have to do it like a formal this and this and this, because like yesterday we were at a basketball game, a girls' high school basketball game, and at the far end bleachers, there's a man at the very top who collapsed, right? And there were all these people around him, and I was just like, okay, I know what I can do, right? I can just start sharing, right? With intention and heartfelt compassion. And it took about it seemed like a long time. I was probably like 20 minutes or so, but he was like flat out, and all of a sudden he just sat up. He sat up, and the ambulance came, and they got him down, but he seemed fine. And I was like, did that Reiki contribute to that? I think so, a little bit, right? Yeah. I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt, but those are always things that we can do. And I think we really limit ourselves when we don't open our hearts in that way. I mean, I do it all the time at the grocery store, wherever I might be. It's just because everybody needs it.
And I'm also, I'm not a TV person, a big TV person or news, but I don't shy away from the news as I used to. I felt very like, I can't. But something clicked in me one day to say, whatever you encounter, Ifetayo, you can share Reiki with it. And that is going to bring healing to whatever the situation. So if I happen to watch news or read the paper, then that's where I go. I just go to Reiki instead of in my head about, how bad, how awful, how whatever. And I've been just grateful to feel as though I'm contributing to the pool of love and oneness and healing in the universe. So that's one of my ways of sharing Reiki also at the news.
I also think, for instance, I'm a massage therapist. And
Yeah.
even though I'm not intentionally doing Reiki, people will say, your hands are so hot. And I know that's Reiki, but I'm not turning it on. It's just coming through. So I think they didn't give me permission, and I wasn't my intention to do it, but because it came through, I'm not going to be like, okay, turn it off. I think it's just like, it just knows what it's supposed to do.
I mean, as I hear, in a way, what's coming to me is permission is very linked to results, right? Like, or to expectation of a shift or something. Like, so when we let go of the expectation of changing, healing, fixing, then that authorization makes a lot less sense. And I think the more we really are attached to the idea of authorization, it's a little bit link of the idea that we're doing something. So now I have never thought it like that. It's like we actually then, we need, even when we think about authorization, we need to make sure we're not thinking we're doing something, like we need to just be, because we're respectful, we're active recipients, it's part of protocol, but not, it can even lead to confusion instead of a state of mind of what we're doing in the practice. So, all about authorization if we feel it's right, but do never think we're doing something or like being attached to results. Just that can be a layer of that authorization that I had not thought about. And now I'm even a little bit more iffy about it, right? Because we tend, at the beginning, I think for the first 3-4 years, well, we want Reiki to work so badly. And that's part of the process. And that's part of your journey. And if some people don't feel it from day one, I admire those people. I wasn't one of them. And I don't meet many of them as my students. So really pointing the way towards that and knowing that there's a normal part, but sometimes, there's a moment where we need to move on from that. Perfect. So
I would do the same Reiki protocol, like starting at the head, all the positions, like, because I worked at the Reiki school, I was doing sessions like every day, all day, but I never varied. Like it was but I learned so much. And I think through that, you can learn to be like, okay, I can let go of this, because just because you don't do this exact thing doesn't mean that it isn't going to work. But I was so afraid of it, like you said, of it not working, that if I didn't start at the head, that, oh, it's going to go wrong. As a beginner practitioner, I was very in my box of structure.
I was right. So you learn to draw, drawing and drawing and drawing. Like, I'm gonna do Helene, I'm gonna do you, I'm gonna do Ifetayo, exactly like they are. And then when you have that hand, that ability in the hand, you can start to create better things, right? And you're gonna go deeper than if you start from the beginning doing weird lines.
Yes.
So I think, for example, with distance sessions at the beginning, what the protocol gives you is that structure, as you said, that you need to be able to familiarize with the practice and do. And then you can either use it with a little bit of a deeper understanding of the practice, let it go, or do a little bit like we do. Like sometimes we go back to that pillow or that protocol because we're a little, and not let the ego say like, I wasn't using a pillow, I'm not going back to the pillow, right? So we need to also be very like, leave the ego aside. I do think Zoom has transformed things because now I do have to come and put some makeup on before I do my session, which before I didn't. But that visual connection for me. Thank you. But usually I used to give like sessions like in my bed, like now you can't, right? So, but that visual connection is easier to connect to someone that you see. And I think Ifetayo, you mentioned that, although I miss the days of not having anyone in front and just be no computer, nothing.
I don't use Zoom for mine.
Well,
people like to Zoom. I offered both.
I just don't want to do it. I'll do a Zoom after if they want to do a check-in. Like I usually do a check-in of like, this is what I felt or saw. Like, do you have any questions or something? But I don't do the Zoom during the session.
Well, I found that it was requested of me. I wasn't a big Zoom person or computer person. Actually, y'all wouldn't believe it, but I wasn't, because I'm on Facebook a lot, but I just wasn't. And, but the request for Zoom and what I my practice is to record the session, even though there's no talking, but people refer back to the energy of the session. I've gotten that feedback. You know, they found that to be very helpful. So and even though we are, you know, face to face, my eyes are closed. Really, I close my eyes most of the whole time. And Danica, like you, I'm often moving my hands, you know, wherever my intuition or guidance is having. Sometimes I'm just sitting in meditation with my hands here, sharing Reiki, but often I will get guided to kind of put my hands in different places. But they have the recording, and I don't know, I think that may be what people wanted. Maybe that's what they were requesting, and so I'm comfortable with that now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Zoom came part of my practice because people, especially because now people are asking for an hour session.
Yes.
And that's a shift from the pandemic. Before it was half an hour. Now a lot of people want an hour. Yeah. So like Helena, start with a meditation, especially if you're a new client. I'm like, we're going to start with a meditation and then we go, and then further sessions maybe. But I think for people, when they invest a 1 hour, especially with the cost of life, like they're investing, it's almost like for them, I feel the Zoom gives them like, okay, she's there, she's not having my party and I'm paying. Like it gives them. Right. So for me, when I think of Zoom, I honestly, as I say, I prefer to be in my house, like, you know, with crazy whatever. And I am visual, so always needed like a picture to stay focused in that image in my heart. But I think for them, for the people receiving the session, is being, and not everyone, but for many of them, it's very important, and they receive more actively and they feel it more. And I know we shouldn't get attached, but they're more comfortable with having distant Reiki now than they were 3-4 years ago, in my experience. And that's, again, very limited. And
yeah, I don't say if they want that, I don't go, no, I'm open to it. My preference is to not.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I think that's all our preference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of times I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I wasn't saying anything important, believe me.
Okay. No, a lot of times I'll just connect in the beginning on Zoom, and then we'll go off, and then I'll do a phone call afterwards. So just so we can chat and see each other and kind of get that feel. Yeah. Because I think there was one session that I had a little trouble with Zoom, but I'll talk about that later. I think you might be asking a question about that, Natalie. About maybe an experience that we have that maybe didn't go exactly the way that we thought it would.
That's where we're going right now. I think, first I wanted to give one tip, like one simple tip. And obviously we know practicing every day, but one tip that has helped you in your practice. And then we're going to go for that last round question. Helene is pointing at. Ifetayo, one tip.
Oh, one tip. For me, the embodying of oneness, the embodying of no separation has been the biggest change, the biggest gift for me in my practice. Embodying no separation.
Lovely. Danica, one tip.
So for distance sessions, my tip would be to deepen your connection with the essence of Hansha Shinen. Bring it into your practice. Become familiar with the expansiveness of how it feels. Get comfortable with it, because it can feel weird. Like, just become familiar with it. Make it your friend. And the more you can trust in the interconnection of all things, there's really nothing to worry about. You can feel really confident in that whatever you do is going to be received in a healing, positive way to the person that you're sending to.
Helene.
I would say always remember to work with the precepts every single day, because I think, like I said in the very beginning, for me, when I learned all the symbols, I was very worried about everything. And I think the more that you work with the precepts, you're going to be more comfortable also with sharing Reiki remotely, and just trusting, and you'll be able to just fall into that space without worrying about, did I draw this wrong or did I draw that wrong, and just trusting and knowing that it works. So really, really working with the precepts.
Love that. And I'm between two tips, so I don't know which one to say. I think the first one is focus. So always check that you're focused, like at the beginning. Then we go to the state of mind and use whatever ritual or tools you need to stay focused. Don't rush. But I think the other thing is like also receive. So often we share Reiki sessions, receive from different practitioners and notice how different the energy is and how lovely it is. Like exchange, do a lot of exchange as well, and receive as well as offer. A lot of times we become Reiki too. We offer a bunch of distance sessions. We never receive one. So I will encourage people to receive as well from their fellow practitioners. And the focus is because I'm obsessed with focus, which sometimes, it's a hard thing for me after 15 minutes. And some days I'm like an hour, 2 hours, like, woo, it's amazing, right? So probably being honest where we are. So I wanted to finish, and I do this with every interview, with everything, right? You are all amazing humans practicing for years, have a very strong practice. So someone who's starting is going to say like, oh my God, like I can never reach that level or whatever, like I'm struggling. So I want you to share one story of an oops for a remote session or the concept of remote Reiki, something you did that you're like, either you grew out of it or always a funny story, honestly. Something is like, okay, not everything always goes perfectly when it comes to Reiki, and that's okay.
I'll go first. And I'll follow up on my Zoom. So it was like one of the first times I had used Zoom for a remote session. And I was like, well, of course I'm going to do it for the whole entire session. And so we connected, we chatted, and then the person who was receiving put their laptop like on top of their legs. So all I could see was up the person's nose. It was like the only thing I could see was their nose, like looking this way, right? And so it was very hard for me to stay focused because I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm just looking at their nose the entire time. So it's just, I had to laugh because, okay, well, this is a lesson that I've learned. Like we have to figure out a way with the camera so that we're not looking at something. Of course, the session went well, but it was just like initially I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be looking at this person's nose the entire time.
That is hilarious. But again, that happens in Reiki, everything, and that is a funny one and a very practical advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, my story, I'm a morning person. I get up really early, and most of my distance sessions are morning. People ask for morning, 9:30, 10. But I have been requested later in the day, and my energy begins to wane around 3:30, 4, and I often will take a nap so I can have the rest of the day because that's just how I am built. Well, I had a later, like 5:36 session, distance healing, and in the meditative state, I went to sleep. So I just went so in, I literally went to sleep. And well, I was sharing Reiki, and I trust the Reiki was still flowing. But I did wake myself up. I mean, it was that automatic response of, oh my God, I felt my head had dropped and everything. And I was like, oh. Her eyes were closed. She was on the bed, and she didn't see. I know she got it in the recording, but I guess. But that was my. So I'm always cognizant in the evening when I share Reiki at a distance. I have to have had a nap or really just keep myself awake because I can easily go to sleep in that meditative sharing state. So that's the one experience that to me was the funniest because my head did literally had to jerk my head up when I woke up.
So funny. Wait, was it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have like a good funny story.
It doesn't have to be funny. It can be.
I have fallen asleep. If I do them late at night, I have done that. And the other thing I've done is if a friend asks me to send Reiki, I will go, yes, of course. And then we'll agree. They'll say, can you do it at this time? Maybe for something specific, and I'll forget. So then when I remember, I'll do it, even though it's the same day. So when we talked about like, letting go of, you know, time, space, whatever. I just had to learn to, like, whenever I did it was fine. But I have forgotten, like, just with friends, like, send me Reiki and I'll go, yes, right now. And then, you know, go make a cup of coffee or whatever it is, you know, because I'm distracted. But so I have done that and then had to make up for it later.
Oh, you ladies are making me feel so much better. Like, check, falling asleep, like with friends. I think the only thing, like, I remember, because again, beyond like having to make sure I don't drink a lot of coffee before a session, which I've learned not to do, because then I come back, I'm present, but it's like, Amazon, come back. Like, so it's not as pleasant. It takes a little bit more work. I think the only thing that was very funny is at the beginning, I was told I needed the address, right? The exact address. And I had this idea this person lived in Brooklyn, and I didn't ask for the address. I'm like, oh, whatever. Like, oh, because I knew her. It was like a friend. So I do the session. And at that time, again, I'm very visual, as you can see from the drawings. I imagine in this beam of light connecting. I think I was in Lower Manhattan with Brooklyn over the river. Amazing stuff. And I was also like, I'm a very dramatic. So I was like, at that time, I feel a lot, right? So I'm feeling the heart connection and the Brooklyn house, and I visualizing this light filling to the window, going to my friend. Then with that, it's like, oh, I really enjoyed the session. I'm like, yeah, I was visualizing, you know, the connection to Brooklyn. I'm like, I'm in Europe. I'm like, oh. So she got the session. She felt it. I was like, and I was like, I guess it was a good way to
know the Brooklyn Bridge is like lit up.
Rainbows, right? Like everything. And I'm like, what made me laugh? It was like, I was so sure that bridge of light wasn't doing the trick, right? So I don't ask for addresses anymore. But I think this is a great example. Again, we need to soften into remote healing. Sometimes we're going to fall asleep. It happens. Sometimes people don't get the text, like get ready when we use text, and then they're like, they're gone somewhere else instead of having this. So a lot of things are going to happen, and we just need to go with it, right?
And have compassion. Show compassion for ourselves, as we say in our precepts. You know, that has just lifted my whole life. Just share compassion with myself and all others. It has been a game changer for me. So, you know, anything can happen, and this is just what happened, and it's all good, you know.
And being flexible, you know, just be flexible.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be this rigid way.
Right.
Just be flexible. Find your way, what feels right for you.
And try to take your naps or not too much coffee. Just napping and coffee. That's very important, right? And I think also, again, and I think that's also important, like with regular sessions, right? Not do as like a reading, like then call on the phone and I felt all of this, but like also the way we communicate. You know, we have to follow the same very positive language, like empowering people to have what they felt versus, you know, then calling them and overwhelming them, especially after. If it's a session agreement with time, they may be like, and we're excited and we call them, hey, by the way, that heart of yours, you know, we have to that as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that I do too, is like I have the client call me when they're ready. So that if they fall asleep or whatever, that they can call me back afterwards and then we connect. So because I don't want to disturb them if they happen to fall asleep or whatever.
Yes.
I take their notes after, and I do the same. Like, you let me know when is a good time to discuss whatever.
Why didn't I think of that ever? I'm like, I'm so stealing that tip from both of you.
Because I'm a massage therapist, so I take notes. I take notes after every session, so it's just a habit. But my teacher taught us as practitioners, like as Reiki, like we had to take notes, like as if we were, you know, like soap notes we had to do for every session.
Yes.
It's nice if you work with someone over time, because then you have this like history of what happened with each session. So it's nice to you can like go back and reference it.
Awesome. Okay, we are reaching to the end, which is breaking my heart because I feel we have 5 minutes talking, now close to an hour. So final parting words to close this. And it can be anything from I hated being here to keep on practicing.
I just want to say I'm just filled with gratitude for the opportunity. So thank you. And it was nice spending a Sunday afternoon with you all. So thank you.
Thank
So
you.
much.
Thank you. And I just love to share, encourage everyone who's watching the video to enjoy your Reiki practice. Just be enjoy with wherever you are in your practice, and know that it's just going to get better and better. That's just real, and I love that. So thank you for letting us share.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everybody else. It was nice meeting everybody. And I'd say just be compassionate to yourself. You know, that's how you learn. So when things don't go exactly the way that you think they're going to go, like let go of expectation, be flexible, go with the flow, and be kind to yourself.
Yay.
Thank you so much. And there are no words to express my gratitude. I reached out to all of you and you said yes. And you've been so accommodating. And really, really thank you. I admire you so much, the three of you. So I'm grateful. And anyone watching this episode, if you have any questions regarding the remote session or any opinion, feel free to share. Again, just understand these are really based on our own personal practice. Sometimes we can get a little bit defensive when we hear something very different. I just invite you again to bring a lot of compassion, to soften and listen. Some things may resonate immediately. Some things you may think were aliens. They may resonate in 10 years, right? So a lot of times when I go to martial art, my sensei, she knows I'm like not really talented. She points things to me. And sometimes it took me 4 years, 5 years to get some of her stuff. But I still remember, then they got. So just bring an open mind to this, and any other experience or tip that you would love to share, I'm very happy to put in the comment section or share them in social media as well. So we keep on sharing as a community and growing together. Thank you, ladies, so much. I don't want to let you go. I'm so happy when I see your beautiful faces.
Thank you, Natalie.
Hey, everybody.